Hey everybody, it is Garrett, and today I am going to talk about something that I think is important to note when it comes to culture, and it's anthropology related, so I like anthropology. Um, but it's the idea of um, identity and labels. Now, in general, I find that the idea behind labels is misconstrued because oftentimes when we hear the word labels and we see people being labeled, um, there's the assumption that that places them into a little box of who they are as a person. Like if you see, say, like a musician playing, or if you see like someone playing a guitar, you would be inclined to call them a guitarist. They're labeled a guitarist. If you see somebody who is doing, math formulas, and they have a degree in math, you might be inclined to call them. Well, you would be inclined to call them a mathematician. Um, if you saw somebody doing astronomy, they're an astronomer. But I think these things also go a little bit deeper than that. Um, and the first thing I want to say is that all labels are, at their surface, valid. However, some labels are often better than others. And this is the point that I want to make is that um, as people, we instinctively label others. If you come across somebody who you disagree with and you dislike them, then you might call them maybe an adversary. You might call them just someone you disagree with. You might call them, you might just say, I dislike them. Dislike them is still a label, and vice versa. If you find somebody who you agree with or you get along with, you would call them a friend. You would call them an acquaintance. At work, you call your fellow workers or fellow co you fellow you if I ever get these words right, you call your fellow coworkers, colleagues, acquaintances, um, that sort of thing. But the idea of labeling as being negative and derogatory, that stems from when the labels being used are not the one that the person wants to be identified with. So that's when I think labels can become dangerous. And, you know, in small talk where you're kind of just, bantering back and forth, and, you let it slip out that, oh, you're so weird, oh, you're really stupid right now about something, that's bound to happen. That's just natural human discourse. But the important thing to note here is that with labels, when you are explicitly labeling somebody, you are giving them a title that um, you are giving them a title that you're thinking they have that maybe they didn't ask for, or if they did ask for it, then that would be more appropriate. So, for instance, if somebody um, drops out of college and fails their classes, you'd be inclined to say, "Oh, they're lazy." You might be inclined to say that. Okay, well, is that true, or do they have extenuating circumstances with regards to that? Is it them just being lazy, or is it them just having to work through other things? Do they just want to, maybe they decide to go take another job in another city or state. Maybe they decide to go and do some soul searching. Um, you know, if someone comes up to you wearing a pointy wizard hat and they start juggling baseballs in the air, or you would probably feel inclined to call them weird. But are they actually weird? Who's the weirdo? The spectator watching, or the one having fun, juggling and being a wizard? you know. But it's just one of those things where, when it comes to identities and labels, we are, like I said, it's instinctual, and it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, so um, this person wants to identify as such and such. Why? Why should I call them that? If you start second guessing what they want to be addressed as, that's where I think the difficulty comes in. This is even important in, say, I would say, and again, this is not exactly my area, but like LGBTQ discourse, somebody who identifies as being, lesbian, transgender, things like that, it would be important to identify them with those if that's what they want to be, and that's what they want you to, one of the parts that they want you to see them as. Do keep in mind that, especially with labels, there's more beneath the surface than just that. Particularly, like, if, take myself for instance, if I call myself a poet, um, that means I write poetry, right? Okay, well, there's more to it, right? As a poet, I write poetry. I might publish poetry. I might journal with it. What kind of poetry am I writing? What kind of styles do I work in? What kind of forms do I use? What sets of patterns do I like with, regard to like word choice and whatnot? There's all sorts of little things that work their way into labels. And this is why I think that we should always be careful or cautious of how we go about addressing or labeling others. And a lot of the times this is a very subconscious thing, but a way to like turn it conscious is, okay, step back for like 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 seconds and think, okay, this person here, they're in front of me, they might seem weird, they might be standoffish. Is it because they are presenting themselves as in a certain way that I'm unfamiliar with or familiar with? And I think going into that type of mental conversation would be important to help understand exactly who they are as people and what you can do in order to properly address them. It might even be important just to ask directly. I mean, that's okay as well. Directness is usually more important than, directness is more positive, important than saying nothing and then just going off the slightest of judgments. Yeah, so that's all I got for this video. I hope this kind of helps with understanding labels and, the identity process for things. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Otherwise, thank you and have yourselves a nice day. So, go throw the peace signs.